Welcome to Clapback. Clapback is brought to you by Kingdom Keys and Healthy Living. If you would like to support us, please hit the Patreon button here on Podbean, or you can donate directly to $Pastor K50. That's $Pastor K50. If you'd like to get in touch with us and correspond, you can do so at clapback770@gmail.com. That's clapback770@gmail.com. When you support this program, you are supporting the hungry, the naked, and helping to build communities. 100% of your donations will go toward helping someone else. We're helping the Shriners Children's Hospital. We're also helping the St. Jude Children's Hospital. We need your support. Don't just be a stander buyer. Don't just be a bench player, but jump into the game. It is time to clap back. Our phone lines are open. Chat is open. You're more than welcome to dialogue with us. Make sure that you share this. Make sure you like it, and make sure you follow, because we have a great show planned today. Welcome. All right. Thank you all for tuning in today. Wanted to get on here today and just talk about some things that are going on. We all have been dealing with, regardless of what side of the fence we're on, whether we're on, and there are many sides of the fence, whether we're on the side of the fence of racism, equality, prejudice, Black Lives Matter, Confederate flag. We have so many issues, police brutality. We're dealing with a lot of issues at one time. And we're seeing that what is going on in America is now a powder keg that has exploded. We have issues in every demographic of oppressed people, to which I belong to the African American community, and there seems to be a disproportionate amount of issues that are related within the community and outside of the community of the Black community. So we're dealing with it on several different fronts. And so I've been having conversations, and I want to say here, I want to thank the Jet Black Initiative for allowing me to be a part of the discussion on yesterday. You'll be hearing some great things that are coming out of the Jet Black Entertainment and the non-for-profit that we are establishing, and still determining my role in helping supporting getting the names of Black businesses out there in our community so that we can do business with Black and minority businesses. So those that may have problems advertising their business or getting people to do business with them. And of course, we're wanting to promote those businesses that are providing quality service that are above board. So everything that we want to do, we want to help the community. And some of us are doing this on our own, but collectively we're coming together and forming an organization that is going to be part of a solution to the problem. And that's what I want to talk to us today about. So those of you who will come in later, please make sure you share. Some of you may listen to this podcast later. Make sure that you leave your comments. Make sure you share it. Let's support one another and do what we need to do. So let's get some information here together so we can get started with this dialogue on some things that I feel is very, very needed to discuss in the day and age we live in. One of the things that attracted me to the Jet Black initiative was the positivity of bringing about solutions to the problem, because any of us can talk about the problem. It is so easy, and we see this a lot even in protests, where you have groups of people who will bring up the obvious and they'll talk about the problem, but they don't have a solution. And I think that if you're going to be a part of the full conversation, you can't just bring a problem. You have to at least have some type of solution, some type of starting point to be able to progress the conversation. Because if we spend so much of our time dealing with the problem and not dealing with the solutions, we'll be there all night and nothing will change. And so, I had a conversation today with a friend of mine, and we were talking about all of the issues that are, of course, confronting African Americans, minorities, and disenfranchised people, but also just people in general. And one of the interesting things is that when you look at the civil rights movement of days gone by, 50s and 60s on up till today, one of the things that Martin Luther King and some of the other individuals that were part of the civil rights movement did was make sure that there were certain laws that were passed and legislation was brought. And we were talking about legislation alone is not going to fix the problem because here's the issue. When you have a group of disenfranchised individuals that are going to their oppressor and saying, I want you to develop legislation, I want you to develop laws that will give me my freedom and equality. And then I want you to have enough dignity and enough ethical fortitude to preside over these laws and distribute and administer these laws in a way that will provide me the equities that I need in life. And in some ways, that is a naive approach because you have to go back to the seed or the root of the problem. And when you are going to individuals who hate you, who don't want to see your freedom, who don't want to give you equality, they can be pressured by the masses to write legislation. But within writing the legislation, it can be written in a way where there are loopholes to get around giving you your freedom. So it is when we look at when slavery was ended and you have the Reconstruction period, as African Americans begin to become fluid and begin to be educated and begin to run for office, begin to build their own communities, what you found was the same body of individuals that wrote legislation and law to set slaves free, on the back end wrote laws of loitering and other ridiculous laws, vagrancy laws that allowed the state to imprison vast numbers of African Americans to be able, what, once again, to put them right back on the farms that they came from, to cause them to work for free, to not educate them or rehabilitate them, but to simply strip them of their rights as a human being. And so, as you moved into the civil rights era, there was a lot talked about in giving people rights through legislation. Legislation doesn't change the heart of an individual because if I, for instance, give you the right to vote, but then when you exercise that right to vote, I come up with other laws or other things at the poll that says, okay, you have to tell me how many marbles are in the jar, or you give me a book to read or an encyclopedia to read that you know I'm not familiar with the language, so I can't read it, and you disqualify me. When you gentrify and redline communities that disenfranchise minorities and African Americans from being able to get to the poll, when you have a health crisis such as COVID 19, and we see disproportionately that the majority of the people that are getting sick and dying are of African American descent or people of color. Because of that, when you look at a great number of these places where you can get tested, they're not in Black and Brown communities. A lot of these individuals don't have transportation to get to a testing facility, they don't have mass transit to get them there. So they're stuck in their communities to be sick and to pass the disease along. Many of them don't have health care to be able to pay for the medical treatment. And so they can't be seen or won't be seen. And the fact that because they don't have health care or they don't have a job, they tend not to go to the hospital. So even the numbers that are reported are not accurate numbers because there are a lot of people that are infected with COVID 19 that have not had a test, that have not gone to the hospital, and that are not being treated. There are many people that are dying from the result of COVID 19. A lot of times, when a person dies, they don't necessarily die from the condition, they will die from an underlying condition that was caused by the main condition. And so the numbers that are reported are low. They're saying in some places that the number is actually 10 times greater than what is being reported. And so we were talking about the civil rights movement and again how the the fallacy of believing that legislation alone was going to bring about equality, not thinking in terms of the ones writing the legislation are the oppressors that in the first point don't want to give you your freedom. They hate you. They're smart enough to write the legislation that allows loopholes that even though the law says you're equal and you're free, they have subcategories within these bills and these laws that allows your rights to be violated. Illegal search and seizures, illegal racial profiling, illegal stop and frisk. All of these things contribute to still keeping Black and brown people in a disproportionate way locked up or in a system that then once they're in that system, it holds them back from employment. They get a record. They can't go to college because they can't pay for it. They can't get financial aid if they are a felon. If they have a drug charge, they can't get financial aid or student loans. So they're left to fend for themselves. So that means that in many cases, they're not going to be educated. They're not going to be able to afford to be able to uh, go to school and learn a trade or learn a skill. Even in the day and age we live in now, certifications are more important to have than a degree. But many of these individuals can't pay for certification and they're disqualified because of misdemeanors. Some places can go back 7 years on an application, other places can go back 10 years. You could have made a mistake 7 years ago or 10 years ago, and you're still held back because when your record is pulled up, doesn't matter what the infraction is, and it's even gotten so bad that you could have been arrested falsely, let out. I mean, case could have been dropped, but you have an arrest record. And a lot of people think just because when they get arrested, they think just because the district attorney dropped the charges that clears them. But then they go apply for a job, and the job pulls up their criminal history, and there's an arrest record. And you have to understand how people in authority look at arrest records. For a conservative person or any person that doesn't understand the life of a African American or a brown person that's been discriminated against, their mindset says, well, they got arrested and maybe for some reason through some loophole they got off, or maybe they didn't have enough evidence really to convict them, but they did something. And so just the mere fact that you were arrested can hold you back from a job. And a lot of people don't know this, and you have to pay the court system or an attorney to actually get your record, your arrest record expunged. So here again, you're dealing with a financial situation of repression and oppression because you have people who can't afford to get an attorney. Pro bono attorneys are very limited and overworked and don't have a lot of time to do pro bono work. Some of them make just enough over the threshold to be able to get legal services, but yet are not making enough to live. And so we talk about legislation. And we were talking about in today's movement, legislation, because we're looking for police reform, we're looking for all of these reforms, but if we don't learn anything from the past, yes, let's push for legislation, but I believe that part of the solution to the problem, because here's the thing, Black people don't know who they are. We don't have an identification. We don't have a name. We don't have our heritage, our nationality, all that. We don't have any of that. Our names are given to us colonized. We just have to accept that. We're colonized. We don't know our family tree. We don't know who we're descendants of. And so part of the solution to the problem is, for some reason, there are too many of us that are trying to force our way to fit into this society that hates us, to fit into this society that doesn't want us, fit into a society that has told us we don't matter. And we are trying to push ourselves into a home that doesn't want us. I mean, have you ever been somewhere where you know you were not wanted? You went to a party and you know everybody there did not want you there. And you got in that party and everybody's having a good time, but everybody's looking at you crazy and you feel alone because you're not wanted. You got what you wanted, you got to get in there, and you thought getting into the party that they would accept you because maybe you see someone else in there that looks like you, but not realizing that the only reason that they've accepted that person is because they have become an ally with the enemy. And so Black people have, for some reason, have tried to force ourselves into a society that doesn't want us. And so as we were talking, one of the things that I said, solution to the problem is, why don't we as African Americans do like every other minority culture? And what is that? When you look at the Asians, they have Chinatown. They said, hey, we're going to come over to America. We're going to get our piece of the American dream. And we're okay if America doesn't want to accept us. We'll build our own communities. Jewish people, we'll build our own communities. We'll build our own homes. We'll have our own banks. We'll have our own grocery stores. We'll have our own everything in our communities, our own schools. We'll raise up our children. We'll provide the assistance that we need. And we have Chinatown, we have Jewtown, we have all of these things. I think it's still called Jewtown. I don't mean to offend anybody if that's not what it's called, but when I was growing up, that's what it's called, Jewtown. You can go, you go down to Chicago and other places, and you find where they have open markets where you can sell and buy things. So they keep their dollar in their community. They build around their community. They support around their community. They have initiatives around their community. They take control of their children's education. They can take control of their commerce. They can take control of their health. And in places in society where they're allowed to go into the job market, they do that and they bring that money back in their community and they support that community. And I believe that at this point in time, what we need to do as a race of people is we need to, first of all, begin somewhere to help us to identify and to love ourselves, to first identify who we are and to begin to help us to love ourselves. I mean, we can see that someone said on a post that our fathers in the civil rights movement, they were oppressed. But what did he say? He said, we are damaged. We are damaged goods. And you can see that because there is so much division amongst us as a people. I mean, when we turn on Facebook and we see an African American who claims that she's a Christian go across New York City and paint over Black Lives Matter, say horrible and despicable things about Black people, and says Trump forever, this is a problem because she doesn't realize that she becomes the ally of the oppressor and the voice of the oppressor. She allows the oppressor to go sit in their comfortable home and do nothing because the oppressor realizes that they have Black allies that now will speak for them. She does it under the name of being a religious person, and she's downing Black Lives Matter, a group of people, irregardless of now, there's a difference between Black Lives Matter, the movement, and Black Lives Matters, the organization. But in some things, they intersect with one another because they raise money for feeding homeless people. They raise money for Black communities, for education. They raise money for health. They do all of these things to build up the community. And yes, there may be some things that Black Lives Matter, the organization, may do as far as how they get their money and what have you. But when you have a Black person that says that Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization like Antifa and the Black Panthers, how can you say the Black Panthers was a terrorist organization when they made sure Black children had breakfast every day? When they made sure Black women and people in the community were taken care of, when they had after school tutoring programs, when they promoted education, when they promoted after school programs so that Black boys and girls would stay out of trouble, so that when their parents were at work and they were latchkey children, that the neighborhood would look out for them. How can you call that a terrorist organization? But then you say nothing about neo-Nazism, skinheads, and KKK. But you berate your own peoples. You see, we are damaged. And so one of the first things that we need to do as a community is begin to heal each other. We need to come together and we need to speak life into each other. We need to get a grip in our own communities and say it is no longer acceptable to sell drugs in our community. We don't support selling drugs, but if you're going to sell drugs, you're not going to do it in our community. You're not going to poison our people. You're not going to take mothers away from their children. You're not going to take fathers away from their children because that makes you even worse than the oppressor because you're doing it to your own people. We've got to start holding Black people accountable for our own community. We got to start saying, hey, I understand in the hood, we don't snitch. But when murders are committed, when felonies and crimes are committed, and our Black and brown people are hurting each other, we have to stand up as a community and we have to give those people up. If they don't want to be part of society, if they don't want to be a part of the Black society and promote Black lives and love Black lives, they're an enemy just like the racist or the oppressor is an enemy. Because ultimately, they are part of destroying children and women and families, getting men and women hooked on drugs where children are left at home with no food, no supervision, left to raise themselves. That is an enemy to us all. We have to begin to stand up and say to the gangs, no more. You're not going to profit off of the demise of your own people. You're going to have to find something else to do. If you're smart enough to sell drugs, if you're smart enough to run a criminal enterprise, you're smart enough to start a legitimate business. You're smart enough to do something positive. You're smart enough to write a grant to do something to help the people so that you can stop selling drugs and develop something. Take some of that drug money and buy up a McDonald's or all of these businesses that are in our community. Start buying those businesses up and employ Black people. Provide the service. Help take that drug money and help the mechanics in our communities to build nice garages and facilities to get the equipment they need so that we can take our automobiles there. Help the local barbershop to build up their barbershop so they can be a place of dignity. Help the local hair shop to build up their hair shop, the nail shop. Let's take and say we're not going to let the Orientals. Do you not know right now there you cannot go into Chinatown and open up a business? They're not going to let you. You cannot go into Jewtown, and again, if that's not what it's called anymore, please forgive me. You can't go into Jewtown and just open up a business. Those buildings and those areas that are demarked for them, they make sure that it's only their people. And they make sure they hire only their people because they want to build their own people up because society has rejected them. Society has rejected us. And so now we have to get together and say, we understand the problem, but now we've got to put boots to the ground and come up with solutions to build our communities. And we build our communities by building each other. One teach one, one reach one. A home is built one brick at a time. A city is built one brick at a time. And I know it's going to take time for us to see the change, but it's just like an investment. When you invest in something, that investment is seen over time as it grows. And so we may not see the results right away, but some of these things we will see right away. You know, we need to clean up our neighborhoods. We need to make sure that these families that are living in the projects keep the projects clean. You know, I always hear stories that some of the stars and celebrities that talk about being raised in the project, they said they didn't know they was poor. And they said that, you know, their mother and them always made them keep a house clean. That was one thing Black people used to be known for. We used to be known for no matter where we lived, no matter what we had, we kept our homes clean. When I was a kid, when I got up out of my bed, before I went to the shower, before I could sit at breakfast, before I could put my clothes on, I had to make my bed up. When I came home from school, I had to hang up my school clothes and put on my play clothes. When I came back in from playing, washed my hands, sat down and ate dinner, got to eat, got to watch a little television, do your homework. When it's time for bed, you took your clothes off and you put them in a dirty clothes hamper. You took a bath or a shower and you went to bed. Nowadays, we have become so trifling. We become so trifling. We walk into our homes and we got trash and clothes and dishes left in the sink with stuck on food right there because we have become so trifling. But we need to start holding one another accountable. There was a time when I grew up, you didn't go outside and your children looked raggedy. But we've come up in a day and age where people have been so oppressed that they're more worried about how they look than their children. They'll go get their hair done. They'll go buy an outfit for them, and their child's hair will be nappy. Their child will have on dirty clothes when they're flossing with their nails done and ain't got nowhere to go, sitting up in the apartment, nowhere to go, but got their nails on fleek, sitting on Facebook, sitting on live, showing their nails and their hair and whatever else. House be just as filthy and nasty. Children walking around with hampers sagging. Outside, walking around barefoot with no shirt and shoes on. We have got to start holding one another accountable and begin to fix our problems and say, forget America. We're going to build our own economy. Do you not realize that as a unit, if Black people were ever to get together And if we kept our money in our community, do you not realize we would have the eighth largest GDP in the world? That is a major economy. If we were to join together as a group of people and we kept our dollars with us, that would put a hurt on America. Because if we can be the eighth largest GDP in the world, because you do know across the world, Black people are the greatest consumers. We're the greatest spenders. As soon as we get money, we spend it. Some of y'all, as soon as you got your $1,200 or whatever you got, as soon as you got your taxes, you went out and you spent it. You didn't invest it. You didn't save it. You didn't open up your kids' college fund. You don't have health insurance because you don't think you're going to die. So you don't have health insurance. You don't have life insurance. So it's about 98% of the time when one of us dies, we're scrambling trying to pay for a funeral. We're going and asking churches and different people to help us out because we waste money and we don't have. You could get a term life policy, $10,000 term life policy. You can get that for under $20 a month. But these are things that we don't think about and things that we haven't taught. And so it's now time that we come together as a collective body and set an agenda of how we are going to take responsibility for us and begin to fix the problem instead of just talking about the problem. Because if we come together and we're in our communities, we're not going to let police brutality happen. No, no, no. You come in here with police brutality, and it's going to be an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, because I would rather die than live bound. And at some point in time, we are going to have to get to the place where we start dealing with our issues as a Black nation and quit trying to fit into a society that doesn't want us. We have to fix us. We got to quit talking about the problem and we got to start dealing with the solution. If the Asian Americans can come over here and have Chinatown, if the Jews can come over here and have Jewtown, where everything, you cannot, I'm telling you, you cannot, hey, how's it going? You cannot go into any of those communities and start a business. You cannot. Yes, I did. I think I did. You cannot go into Chinatown and you're not Chinese or Asian and start a business. What we have to do as Black people is build us up. We got to quit blaming everybody else and say, because legislation is not going to change their heart. We have got to say, okay, not worried about them. I watched it a long time ago and I can't even remember because I've been on so many stuff. My business is booming and been doing this, and I got involved into the Jet Black initiative that we're doing. But Black people, we have got to start taking responsibility for our education, our communities. We got to tell the drug dealers no more. We got to tell people, if you're going to commit crime, we're going to give you up. And we got to rid our communities of people that don't want to build our community. We got to tell them we don't support drugs. If you're going to sell drugs, sell them in someone else's community, but not here. You're not going to be a part of splitting up Black families by getting husbands and wives and mothers and fathers hooked on drugs. You're not going to burn down and break in Black businesses, and you're not going to be doing none of that. Yeah, I did. I did. It's just like I say, it's been a long time since you've been on here and we conversated, and I've watched about 1 million videos since then, literally. And so we have got to start coming together with solutions now. Solutions. And that's what the Jet Black initiative is about. Helping. That's what I'm about. Other people on these podcasts, you need to support them. You need to listen to them. You need to engage with them, because we can fix this problem ourselves. Yeah, I did. No, seriously, I did. I need to go back and watch it. But we need to start fixing our problems. I'm so sad to think that all of us think that legislation is going to fix the issue. Legislation doesn't change the heart of man. So we got to quit trying to fit in. They don't want us. They don't love us. They hate us. So let's forget about them and let's do what we need to do to fix us. Let's build our own mental health. Let's build our own economic base. Let's quit calling our women bees and whores. Let's quit using the N word with one another. Let's quit being skeptical of one another. Let's quit not supporting one another. As I said before in my closing, the civil rights generation was oppressed. We're broken. We're broken. We hate ourselves. We work against ourselves. And it's sad. We can fix it. Hey, thank you for listening to us today. Thank you for putting up with us. Make sure you reach us at clapback770@gmail.com. Bless you. Clapback770@gmail.com. Please patronize us with any amount to help us to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, build up our communities. Everything you give will go toward helping them. We support the Shriners Hospital and the St. Jude's Children's Hospital. 100% of what you give will go toward them. It is tax deductible because we are a nonprofit 501c3. Tune in every day. Normal time is normally 5 p.m. Central Time, but we weren't able to come on today at that time. But again, I want to see you back here. Make sure you share, make sure you follow and like. Until next time, remember, it's time to clap back.